and welcome to today's session where we'll be looking at adding a map to a to-do list Android application, and this is part 2. So remember, in part 1 we actually created the body where we have the map view where we'll add our map. We have the list view where we'll add our items, that is the tasks. We have our edit text where you'll type in the task, and we have the button add task, which will be clicked to add the task. So let's look at the functionality of this application. So the first thing I want to do is actually create an array list which will hold our to-do list items, and then create an array adapter which will populate our list, all right? And then I'll add this to the list view. So the first thing I want to do is actually come here and say private array list, and this will be a string, and then we can name it Wens items. All right, so remember that is what will hold our to-do list items, and then we can come and say private array adapter, and say again it's also going to be a string, and then here we can just say Wens adapter. All right. Okay, so after creating that, now we need to come to our body here, to our on create. All right, and then for the list view, now we want to now declare them. So now we can come and say Wens items. So let's define it is equals to new array list, and then that will be our items. All right, that will be our, so this is where our items will be. All right, this is where our items will be held, and then now we want to come and save as for the adapter is equals to new array adapter, and then now inside this brackets we need to declare the context, and then we need to declare the layout. So let's use the default layout. So android.r.layout. There's some default layouts that are available which you can use, and then let's come and say we want to use the items, which of course we've declared up here, right? So now let's add this to our list view. So Wens list view dot set adapter, and then inside it now we can add the Wens adapter. All right, so now having done that, we now have a way of adding, we've now actually completed that section. So now we want inside our button to now add the functionality of checking whether what the user has typed into the edit text, and then verifying if it's null, and then after verifying that it's not null, we can actually now add the data. All right, so here we can actually come and say string. We can now declare a string. Let's talk of task data, and then is equals to, now remember we declared our edit text, so we can just say Wens edit text, and then let's get the text from the user. All right, so and then .to string. So let's just make sure that is a string. All right, so after doing that, now you want to actually check if the data that is entered, right, we'll need to actually declare the if statement more properly. So if this task data equals null, we just put that, and then now we can come here and create the method, and now in here we'll put maybe a toast to just tell the person. So I've just clicked toast, and then I've clicked control and space button. If I click enter, it actually automatically creates for me that. So we can just tell the person typing in task cannot be empty. All right, task cannot be empty. And then we can come here and say now else. So it will check and find that if the edit text the user has typed in is empty, it will tell him or her task cannot be empty. But if it finds that indeed there is something that has been typed, then we can actually now populate our adapter, right? So you can just say add and then now add that data. All right, so once we do that, we now in our application now we have made sure now the data is actually being added to the task. And now the other thing we can now do is actually now adding the map component. All right, so we can come and say ArcGIS map, for instance, let's talk of Wens map is equals to new ArcGIS map. All right, so for Wens map, let's actually set the base map. So set base map, and then let's talk of base map. We can put OpenStreetMap. All right, and then now we declared our map view, so you have to make sure you say the map view dot set map. All right, so now what we have is okay, so in here we have to now add the map. So what we have is we have a user interface which actually we can add a task and it has a map as well. So let's just run this to see what we have so far. Right, so I'll run it, and then I'm just using a Power Mirror, which is actually freely available, to cast this to my phone, and that's why you can see it. So this is how it appears. So you can see we have our add task here, and we have our map which is not loading because perhaps we've not added the internet permission. So we can just come here to our manifest, and yeah, let's add users permission, and we have internet. All right, so we can have it uses internet permission. So let's just run that again. So let's just run that again, and okay, now we have we should have the map loading. Great. So now we have a section where we can add a task. So let's talk of for instance task 1. Okay, so that's the keyboard. So add task 1. So if we click on add task, you can see that we've added the task. So for instance, you can have task 2, and now we have an application which actually we can add a task and it has a map. So we now want to actually be able to first of all delete we want to be able to delete this task. So let's add the delete functionality to our application. All right, so we want to be able to delete that task. That's one. And another component that maybe we want to add is we want our map to actually zoom in into where we are currently located. So the first functionality that you want to add here is for instance delete delete the task. So you can come and say delete task, and then so we've created the method, and then here you can come and say create the method. So now inside this delete task, this is where now we'll actually declare we'll actually now create the functionality where we can now delete the task, right? So let's just simply say the list view now, so the Wens list view, and then we can set an item long click listener, and then here so you can say adapter view, and if you now do this and you click enter, it will actually bring you it will actually fill for you this automatically. And now in here, at the end of the day, we want the functionality that we come up with to actually return true, right? So now in here we can just say if this user presses the item for long, so Wens items dot remove, right? But then again, we want to actually make sure that we now pick the position of the item selected, right? So we need to make sure we pick the position of the item selected. But before the item is deleted, we may want to notify the user that the data has been deleted. So you can just say you have deleted a task, all right? So this just informs the user that they have actually deleted the task, and then we have to notify the adapter. So Wens adapter dot set notify on change, and then we can say so sorry about that, so notify data set changed, all right? So that will actually tell our adapter that well, there's something that has occurred here. So let's just rerun our application, and see if our new changes have now been applied. All right, so now if we add a task, so let's say task 1, and we add it, and we add maybe task 2, all right. So if we now come and you want to delete task 1, you can just long click and you'll see you've been notified you've deleted an item. If you want to delete task 2 as well, you can actually now delete it by long pressing. So now what we want to do is we want to actually now add the location component to our application, right? So we want that when we actually load the application, it opens up and loads our location on default. So the first thing we want to do is actually come to our manifest and make sure we've added the user's permission of find location, and then we also want to come and say users permission, and then we want to also have cost location, all right? And then now in our main activity, the first thing we want to do is actually just create another variable which will now refer to our location display object. So here here we can actually say private and then location display, and then we can actually come and say m location display. So the reason why I'm using m location display is because there is a standard method of adding location to the ArcGIS SDK runtime for Android, and I'll just add it here and then explain what's going on. All right, so let's just add this right here, and then now we can now come and say we can now come and talk about what's happening. All right, so actually this is us having created a method so this method actually just does everything in terms configuring the location and whatnot. So in this method we have this right here, and this actually what we are actually basically doing here is we're adding an event listener to listen for location data source change events, and now check if the user has granted access to the device GPS location, and if the permission was not granted, then the permission is again requested from the user. All right, so after doing that, this right here, what we are simply doing is actually we are setting the map pan mode. All right, so this is for compass navigation and the start of the location display. And this actually, after doing that, we are now overriding the default Android behavior for requesting permission. And by doing this, we are using this set of code right here. And now you can see there is a string here, location permission denied, which you want to actually now declare for application. All right, so we can just come here and say under values, let's just copy this so that we name our string exactly that way. So we can just come here and say string, right, and then that is going to be our string, and then inside so our string can simply be user denied permission for the device location, or for device location, because you also don't want to make it that long. So I've borrowed a lot of this from the Esri APIs, which of course I'll definitely share the links in the link below. So after doing that, you now want to now come to your set of code, and now down here all right, so just under, so after now declaring your map view, after setting the map, you may want now to set up the location display. All right, so you now add our method, and this should now be enough to actually now have added our this should be enough to have added our location to the map. All right, so I'll just run this, and then on our phone we can now see the application running. So now it comes, and as you can see, it actually asks to access my location, which I allow it, and after allowing it, my map loads to the location where I am currently. And yes, so as for the task, we can talk of task 1. All right, and if we add task, it goes there. So now I need to delete this because it's not written well, and then I can actually change this to probably, so let's talk of task 2, and maybe add task 2, maybe task 1, add it. So now our application, you can add tasks, and you can also, apart from adding tasks, you can also load the current location of a user. So in part 3, we'll actually look at other components like the navigation component. And if there's a section that you feel like we should also include in part 3, please tell me in the comments below. Otherwise, please like this video, subscribe, and make sure you share widely. See you next time. Thank you.